Welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. My name is Macie, and I'm so excited to have you joining the podcast today. As you can probably tell, we are doing something completely different here in 2026 after probably a good 6.5 years into the podcast. You can finally stream these on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, welcome to the show. And if you're still listening on audio, as always, I love to have you here, but just know that if you like to watch as well, you can do that on YouTube now. So I shared 2 weeks ago when I recorded a podcast episode that I was going to be slingshotting a bit, meaning that although I've had my podcast for about 6.5 years now, and we are really close to 300 episodes, I'm going to be kind of going back as like a blast from the past in order to slingshot us forward, because I think kind of reteaching the concepts from who I am now 6.5 years later and being able to show some of that now that I'm doing video could be really, really helpful. And it never hurts for my audience to have a refresh. So if you're new here, you are listening to the podcast at a perfect time, but there are lots and lots of episodes that you can go back and reference. And if you have been a long time listener, this is another way to kind of get value out of the podcast now that you can see what I've been explaining for years. So my hope is that this will be a very powerful and valuable way for you to gain the knowledge of the podcast. And so this being said, last time that I shared with you guys, it was a little bit of my background and my story. This week, I want to start with what I would call the bare but basics of getting into some mindset and emotional awareness coaching. So if you need a refresh, again, I am an emotional intelligence coach for women. I have been coaching now this year in February. It will be 8 years for me. Prior, I was a pediatric occupational therapist. And so you can learn all about that if you go to the beginning of the podcast. But I've been doing this for a long time. And one of my favorite things about having the podcast is being able to break down things that may feel or seem a little bit complicated and make them more simple. So I am actually going to be going back to one of the very beginning concepts that I even learned when I was a client of coaching, and that was something called the model. And the model is a tool that was developed by Brooke Castillo at the Life Coach School, so I can't take any credit for this. It looks very similar to cognitive behavior therapy in the psychology world. So you may see some similarities. You may have even seen a model that is very similar. But the specific model that I'm using was taught to me by Brooke Castillo at the Life Coach School, which is where I received my coaching certification years ago. So with that being said, I like to use this tool in my own life to see the power of my thoughts and my emotions. And that is what you would be using this for as well. And I always tell clients who start working with me, like, it's much easier to understand this when it's written out. So I do have my whiteboard actually, and we'll be referencing that at some different points of the podcast. But once you get really, really good at your self-awareness skills and your emotional intelligence skills and seeing and understanding your mind, this model that I'm getting ready to share, you will be able to do in your head. And when you can do it in your head, you have a lot more control over the results that you're creating in your life. So this is a very powerful tool that you can reference in your life. So here's the thing about our thoughts and our mindset, I should say. Our brain is super, super powerful. This organ is top tier in you creating anything and everything you want in your life. The problem is, as humans, is that we often feel victims of our circumstances. So every single person in the world has circumstances that they are dealing with, unique to them. But the interesting thing about life is that many people in the world have also had very similar circumstances and sometimes even identical circumstances. And so we turn out differently, not so much because of our circumstances, but because of our mindset and the emotions that were associated with the circumstances that we were dealt. So in this being said, I'm going to teach you this model, which can be super helpful. And I'm going to give you examples of how and why being able to manage our mind is so very important. So if you were to look at the board with the model, you'll see C for circumstance, T for thought, F for feeling, A for action, and R for result. Okay, and this goes in order. So you can think of it as your circumstance, whatever circumstances you deal with in your life, creates thoughts in your brain. So we have a circumstance in our life that happens, and then what happens is our brain has thoughts about that particular circumstance. From there, based on the thoughts that you're thinking, your body generates emotions. And whatever emotions you feel in your body, your emotions are what drive the actions that you take in your life or the actions that you don't take in your life. And based on the actions that you take or don't take in your life, you then create the results you're living in your life. So what happens is a lot of people will think, I am the way that I am, or I've become who I've become because of my circumstances. And part of that is somewhat correct, right? But the biggest thing is less about you are who you are because of your circumstances. It's more so about you are who you are because of your thoughts about your circumstances and about who you are. Your thoughts are the creator of everything. So if you really love your life, it's because you have thoughts that really support you loving your life. If you hate your life or you're not happy with certain aspects of your life, it's because of the thoughts that you're having around your life. And the beautiful part about all of this is that your circumstances don't even have to change for you to create a completely different result in your life at all. If you wanted, you could just change your thoughts and the emotions that are being created in your body and live a completely different life solely because of the way that you manage your mind or understand your mind and how that translates to the emotions that you're feeling in your body, which is really, really powerful. That is the beautiful thing about life. And here's what I will tell you. I wasn't always positive and it's not about toxic positivity either, but I wasn't always able to access the part of me that believed I could create different results in my life. I've shared some different things on the podcast over the years, but I didn't have the easiest upbringing. There were a lot of different things that occurred in my childhood, young teen years, young adult years, and even things that still occur that are not the easiest and not honestly ideal. They're not the circumstances that I would choose for myself as it relates to other people or how they show up or how they behave or how they treat me or whatever it may be in my life. But I have a really great life because I understand the power of my mind. I understand the power of our emotions and the power of emotional intelligence. And because of how I use my mind and because of how I manage my emotions, those things drive the way that I show up for my life, AKA my actions. And because of that, I create results that feel really good to me in my life, even when my circumstances are not ideal. And for most of my life, they haven't been ideal. So if you're feeling this way, there's a lot of things maybe in your life where you're like, it's just not fair. I don't like how this feels. I'm not so happy with certain areas of my life. Just know you're not stuck. You can truly create the results that you want. So I'm going to go through really quickly some examples of how the model works. And I'm going to grab my mic here so that you don't lose any sound, hopefully, if you are listening to the audio. Okay, so here's the thing about the circumstance. You could put anything in here. You could put something that someone says to you verbatim. You could have an experience of something that's happened to you. If you are a very early podcast listener of mine, one of my favorite examples to put in the circumstance line is like your tire popping on the side of the road. Okay, not ideal. Nobody wants to get up, get in their car, be on their destination, whether it's to vacation or to work, wherever they're going, and find out that experience their tire popping on the highway or expressway or however you want to say it. So we can pretend that that is the circumstance here. That happens to hundreds, if not thousands, maybe even millions of people, but especially thousands of people every single day. So I want to show you the power of this experience so that you can take your power back no matter what your circumstances are. So the circumstance here, if we just say you're on the highway and your tire pops, not ideal. What happens is you will have lots of thoughts. And here's the thing about our brain. Our brain, it's predicted that our brain can have up to 60 to 90,000 thoughts a day. Most of them are thoughts that we've had from the day before and the day before that. So they're repetitive thoughts. But when we have a circumstance that happens, it's not usually just one thought that comes to our mind. It's a lot. It's several thoughts, which leads to several emotions. So when you're doing this, you want to get really clear on the primary thought that you're having and the primary emotion that you're having, because that's going to help you get really, really clear in what results you're creating for your life. So if it were true that you are on the highway, your tire pops, there are going to be several people. Let's say we have 100 people that have this happen. 50% of people may have the thoughts of, this is so inconvenient. I'm so angry about this. This is ruining my entire day. This has ruined my entire plan. I'm so irritated. I don't have the time for this. I don't have the money for this. Every single thing that I just rattled off to you guys is a thought. Okay, so that's what I mean by we will have dozens of thoughts over one single circumstance in our life. In this situation, what I would ask a client as their coach is, what is the primary thought here? Okay, so let's pick a thought like, this is so inconvenient. It's ruined my entire day. This is so inconvenient. It has ruined my entire day. That's probably going to have you feeling quite annoyed or angry or disappointed, maybe sad. But what you want to get really clear on is, what emotion is this thought creating, not the circumstance. Okay, the circumstance is neutral, and I'll share why it's neutral in just a moment. But let's just say that after this thought that you have, your feeling is aggravated. Okay, so you feel aggravated. Your tires popped on the highway. You have the thought, this is really inconvenient. It's ruined my whole day. And now you're aggravated. So what is really important is to notice your behavior when you're aggravated. Okay, when you feel aggravated, you're probably going to maybe raise your voice, vent to whoever may be with you, make phone calls. Maybe it's to a tow truck person. Maybe you're nasty to the tow truck person because they tell you it's going to be a 3-hour wait. All of that is actually a different circumstance. So I won't try to confuse you too much, but you're going to take several actions. But think about what those actions may be when you're aggravated. Okay, so let's say you get in an argument with the person in the car because you're aggravated. You're aggravated, irritated, and you start to raise your voice at them. You start to fight. You're complaining about life. Why does this always happen to me? You start ruminating on the situation, and you get really, really frustrated and irritated. Okay. And then the result of that is not a lot gets done. Now maybe you're, at odds with whoever was in the car with you. And so it's just not a good situation. Okay. Maybe it was productive. Maybe it wasn't. So if we go back, whenever I said that circumstances are neutral, so people get really bent out of shape thinking that life is happening to them, when really we can flip that and think about, well, life often happens for us. It's how we show up to our life. There are, again, thousands of people who can experience a pop tire on the highway every single day. And if we go back to 100 people who have experienced it, let's say 50% fall into the place that I just talked about. They think their whole day is ruined. It's really inconvenient. They're very aggravated. Now they're fighting with whoever was in the car. Maybe they were rude to the company that is going to come tow. Maybe they ruminate on the whole thing. I don't have the money for this. I don't have the time for this. Maybe they call someone to vent and complain. And then now they are in a tension with whoever was in the car with them, with whoever shows up to try and help them. And they allow their entire day to be ruined from this experience. It would pretty much suck, right? Let's take the exact same circumstance, okay? All that would need to change for the other 50%, or even just one person in this scenario, is to have different thoughts. What if their thought was, I'm so glad we're okay and we have a tow truck service or AAA or whatever it may be, okay? So I'm so glad that we're okay. Nobody else was hurt. That's a different thought. That thought is going to create a different emotion in their body. Maybe they feel gratitude. Maybe they feel thankful. Maybe they feel safe. Okay. If they're feeling gratitude, thankful, safe, they're probably going to show up much more gently in how they take action. So they calmly, right? Maybe even calm. They call the tow truck service. They remind anybody that they're in the car with, it's okay. Like, this could have been worse. We could have had the tire pop. We could have spun out. We could have hit another car. We could have hurt someone else unintentionally by this happening. We are so grateful that we are good and that we're okay. And there is a really different experience in how they show up action-wise in their life. As a result, the car gets taken care of. Maybe it's towed. They get a new tire. They're not at odds with their family or a friend or a spouse, and they have a good day. They feel really grateful. Maybe some things changed in their plan or their calendar, but for the most part, the result is that they're totally fine. They know that they're safe, and they're going to go have a very typical day after this car issue is taken care of. So I want you to think about the energy of even those, the same circumstance, but how two different people could show up to it. Okay. What car, honestly, would you want to be in if you were a passenger? I can tell you, for me, I would like to be with the person that is grateful, has more grateful thoughts, who has a more calm presence, and who is showing up in a way that isn't, maybe angry and frustrated and blaming and woe is me and victim mentality and whatever. Now, in saying that, everybody is entitled to their own feelings. Okay, so this is not shaming for having feelings that are frustrated or aggravated, but it is to show the difference in how you will show up to your life and the results you'll create for yourself. There's one car where they're probably not feeling a lot of tension, they're feeling really grateful. And there's another car where they're probably at odds and someone's probably feeling like, if I speak up, I'm just going to get yelled at or griped at, or I can't say anything right because they're so aggravated. It creates a completely different experience. But the circumstance was exactly the same. And so you can apply this in a multitude of ways in life, no matter what the circumstance is. This is where neutrality comes. And this is why having a coach is one of the most powerful things you can choose for your life. Because when you have something occur in your life, what you want and what your brain honestly needs is neutrality, so you can see some different ways of thinking about things. So you can understand what other emotions and things are available to you to create the results you actually want in your life. So when clients come to me and they're in the process of trying to figure out different things in their life, things associated with parenting or motherhood, or things associated with their romantic relationship, maybe challenges they're experiencing in their marriage or their dating life. When they come to me about their money beliefs or things that they're struggling with their career, the most important thing for me to do as a coach is to show up neutral. Because whenever I show up neutral, I am able to also help them understand, what is the circumstance here? Okay, what are your thoughts about it? What is it making you feel? How are you currently responding? So what is your behavior based on what you're feeling? And then what result is that creating? And ultimately, what I will say to them is, do you like the results that you're creating in your life? When clients come to me, a lot of times it feels very out of control, right? They feel out of control. They're like, these are my circumstances and my life is just in an uproar. I don't like how I feel. I don't like how my marriage is going or my dating life is going, or I don't like how I'm showing up to motherhood because I'm tired and I'm frustrated and I'm not getting the help that I need. And, I'm frustrated in my career because I'm not getting paid what I want to be paid, or I haven't been promoted, or I feel disrespected. all of these things that a client brings to me is able to fit into this. And as soon as a client starts recognizing and becoming aware of themselves, they then have the power to change it. Okay, as soon as they are able to get really good at seeing their circumstances as neutral and deciding how they want to respond, deciding what they want the results of their life to be, that's when their power comes flooding back. And this is not an easy thing to do when you're the person in it, because of course we feel like a victim to our circumstances a lot of times. We're like, no, these are the facts and this is what's happening and it's my circumstances giving me this life. It's my circumstances. But as you can see, circumstances are neutral until you have thoughts about it. Another example that I like to give my clients is one where I talk about if someone came up to you and they said, oh my gosh, Macie, let's just put me as an example. If they came up to me and they said, Macie, oh my gosh, you have the ugliest green nose and the biggest purple hairy ears. If someone came up to me and said that, that's a circumstance. Someone came to me and said, Macie, you have the ugliest big green nose and the hairiest purple ears. Okay, that's neutral. Okay, all that would happen is I'm going to have some thoughts about it. And I'm going to tell you what my thoughts would be. I'd be like, is this person okay? Because I don't have a big green nose and I don't have hairy purple ears. Okay, that's not true. My thought is that's not true. That like something must be wrong with this person or they might have issues. Okay, from there, I'm going to be feeling really confused. Like, why is this person saying this? I don't understand what's happening. And the action that I might take, honestly, I'm probably just going to let it roll off my shoulder. I might tell a friend about it. Like, can you believe what this person said? Like, isn't that so funny or weird? Or, like it's so random. And then the result would be I'm not affected by it. It's just something that's happened in my day. It's just something that's happened in my day. But think about the fact that somebody else might come to me and say, Macie, your podcast totally sucks. Okay. I may not think that that feels very neutral, even though it still is. And I might have the thought, oh, they're right. My podcast does suck. Oh, crap. Well, now I feel totally bad about myself. Ugh, that feels horrible, right? So then I start feeling bad or sorry for myself. And then my action might be, I'm never going to record another podcast episode. I'm never going to put myself out there. I'm going to quit. I'm going to complain to my friends about the bad review or what this person said. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to let it eat my confidence. And I'm never going to show up again to do what I've been doing because someone said the podcast sucked. Okay. And then the result is you all don't get a podcast. I quit on my dreams. And it's all because of what somebody said. Now, I could say it's because that's the circumstance. The circumstance created the results in my life. No, it didn't. It was my thought about the circumstance. Notice how with the big green nose and the furry purple ears meant nothing to me. I don't have any thoughts about it, any negative thoughts about it. It doesn't impact me. It's totally neutral. And it's neutral because people could think different things about it. Some people could be offended by that if somebody came up to them and said it. Some people may not be. I'm not offended by it because there's nothing I believe about it to be true. I don't believe I have a big green nose, and I don't believe that I have purple hairy ears. So it means nothing. So it does nothing for me in my life. I get to move on. But if someone says something else, right, about my podcast, about my coaching, about anything like that, I might have some thoughts about that. But why? Because it's something that maybe if I'm affected by it and I no longer see it as neutral, it's because I may have some subconscious beliefs about it and not even realize it. And that's what happens for a lot of my clients. So that is the work of coaching. We are deconstructing, like, what do you think about your circumstances? How are you showing up in your life? What does that mean to you? How is it affecting you? How are you showing up? What do you want to do about it? How do you want your life to look differently? And when we are in the nitty gritty of this, our own circumstances, our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own history, our own cycles, our own traumas, our own patterns, it is really, really hard to see our way outside of that, meaning that it's really hard to believe we can create other results in our life. But I will tell you that it is possible. But that is the benefit of having a coach, of having a therapist, is having that neutral space to just lay it all out there. But coaching is different in that with coaching, you're ready for the hard thing to be said. You're ready for that coach to call out what they're seeing. And they're not doing it to be mean, they're doing it to help you gain your power back. And so what I will say is that if that's something that you feel ready for at any point in your journey, the best way, if you want to do that with me, is to schedule a consult. You can go to macierenae.com and schedule a consult on that main page. It's 60 minutes. It's free. We will go through every category of your life so that I can see where you feel really good about it and where you don't and why. And then once we go through that, if you feel like coaching would be a great avenue for you to learn this and so many more tools and to really learn how to practice emotional intelligence skills and take your power back in your life, then all I can tell you is to schedule that consult, because this is what I do and I love to do it. But in the meantime, this is a free way for you to kind of start thinking about, yeah, it's not so much my circumstances that are creating my results. In fact, it's not. It is the fact that I have thoughts about my circumstances, as does everybody else in the world. Every single person is doing this kind of process without even realizing it day to day. And that's also why having a coach or a therapist is a different avenue, because whenever you go to your friends or your family, they have their own thoughts about your circumstances, sometimes biases, sometimes protective mechanisms, sometimes opinions that you don't really need. You need neutrality to get clear on your own life. And that's the benefit of having an outsider come in and tell you the things that maybe you can't see because your friends are too close to the problem. Your families are too close to the problem, right? Maybe the people that love you the most or that you love the most are too close, including yourself, right? When you're too close to the problem, it's like having blinders on or not having blind spot mirrors. And a coach or a therapist is we kind of act as the blind spot mirror. Like, have you thought of this? Have you seen this? It's a very powerful thing to have in your life. So if you're needing that, my biggest piece of advice is to reach out, schedule a consult on macierenae.com and get to work. Let's get to work together, because I can tell you this will change your entire life. It did for me 10 years ago. It continues to be one of the most impactful tools in my life, as with many others. And this is just the beginning. So I'll see you next week.